Hey, Julie, bonjour and welcome. It's great to have you.
Hello, Johannes. Thank you for inviting.
No, wonderful. Hey, I want to start with a short, very precise questions before we go into the details. You worked in regulated environments for quite a while.
Yes.
If you have the option, what is worse, a ISO 27001, SOC 2, DORA, or whatever audit in a regulated environment with no access control evidence, or being aware that all your teams are now introducing AI agents to sensitive systems, your infrastructure, databases, maybe even your code base without any oversight? What's worse?
What's worse is definitely number two.
Why is that?
Yeah, because now, obviously now AI is widely spread and adoption is massively growing. It's happening. It's happening also in many regulated industries and fintechs. They are using it to build the products at the heart of the product even. So I'm sure the regulators are very much scrutinizing it, and they will want some governance layer already in place, even if the tools in the market are not all fully built to monitor AI agents at the moment at the runtime in a behavioral way, in a complex way. We're still bound to manual access and manual configs on AI agents. We still need some tools and some governance layer to make sure that we have a little bit of control, for sure.
Cool. So you picked two. Quick follow-up question, as I gave you the choice between a more audit and compliance related question and a more sort of security question. Now that you picked two and said like access of AI agents, it would be the bigger concern. Would this be a bigger concern for security or for compliance reasons?
For both.
Yes.
And yeah, and if you are coming from a regulated industry, you will first care about the compliance, I would say, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because you have really the pressure to provide evidence, like this is a priority when auditors comes, and then you have a bit little time to care more about the in-depth security. The ideal world would be that we do both at the same time, and I also believe in that world, and I also believe that many tools will shift into this direction in the future to close this gap between compliance and security and really blend it within and really capture the dynamic aspect of the reality of AI agents, but also anything on your stack at runtime. So you don't need this manual layer to extract information, to provide evidence. I think things will be embedded now, and this is exactly what we need with AI anyways. Otherwise, things are uncatchable. Risks are just uncatchable. Yeah.
Yeah, the quote unquote funny thing is like we don't really have like human access under control yet, right? So this is
That's
a 10x
right.
bigger challenge. Okay, fascinating. There are a few things we want to go into today in this session. And as we're speaking specifically about access management and access control in regulated environments, and we just tapped into it, maybe to get going, in your former times, you worked at N26. But now you also with Talon.One have very demanding enterprise customers. So these topics, I assume, play a major role when it comes to compliance audits. Yeah, what makes it for you so difficult to provide access control evidence? And this can be N26 experience, Talon.One experience. What's the biggest challenge there for you, really?
I think the biggest is that things are still very manual. Despite having tools in place, you still need to cooperate and coordinate with all the tool owners. Somehow you need a sort of project management team for identity and access management in the company, if it's a big company, especially. Like I remember N26, like they had a dedicated team for that. Even if you have a tool, like Okta or Cakewalk, or you still need a lot of coordinations across application owners, departments to bundle the access, think about the least privilege every time, and to make sure that it reflects reality, that the tools actually like reflecting what's going on in the apps, and that the people are up for just doing the task of recertification, which is really like it is a mission, the recertification time in access.
It is a mission. I love that statement. So let's think about the dream setup, okay? You're joining a new company, let's say compliance and access control is a as a priority for the company, because they know it matters for their, let's say, for their regulation, for their customer requirements. So you're in a new company, it's a company priority, and you can build it from the scratch. What would be also for companies who are in a similar position, in order to deliver specifically in regulated environments? How would you get going to build a very proper access management setup?
Yeah, you have first of all to define this thing called toxic combinations cross tools, and this is not necessarily an easy mission because there are many tools. So you need first of all to think of security design principles. So this is what I do. You don't need to get like granular on every permission scheme, but you need to understand what a type of role should definitely not have access to, like you don't want the founders to have access to the production environment. That's
No.
a very easy one because
We
they
can
are very
agree to that.
It's like a very simple one, but there are some roles that they should be very bounded and have some design principles in place. And if you have already like those baselines of the logic, you build the security logic, then once you implement your tool, things go really, really smooth in terms of establishing your policies and knowing the do's and don'ts.
Yes, I agree. So in other words, before you go into the nitty-gritty kind of details, it's more conceptually thinking
Yeah,
about the most atomic things that you want to
design.
avoid.
Yes, and that would be so great. I'm just thinking like now, I never thought about it exactly like this before, but that would be so great that there is a tool out there that does that, that is able to derive contextual design principles and access security per role in a company, in a specific company. Let's say if you take a startup, you know the do's and don'ts, but in the context of a fintech, which is more like regulated and more scaled up than other type of context, like a context-based access would be amazing, which is more like the ABAC part of things, but having a tool of AI doing that would be amazing.
Yeah, I know you're very passionate about ABAC. Since we met, we spent a lot of time speaking about that. Now, obviously, something new is happening right now. Agents entered the scene. It was already difficult in the past to manage and control access of humans to software. It was difficult from an operational perspective, from a security perspective, certainly from a compliance perspective. I've been there myself in many previous companies. Now agents are changing the game. If you think, coming back to the questions that I asked you at the beginning of the session, what makes agentic access of AI agents to other company systems, what makes this a specific concern of yours?
Yeah, I think it's a very new type of security risk, because the agents are acting in runtime and acting in tools that are dependent on each other and gives access to each other with like a long dependency chain. So of course you can control the access of your agent in the degree one resource in your company, but you won't be able to control the whole chain, right? And the agent can change context in runtime. It's not like when you build and deploy some resources and there is like a static aspect to it. You can already draw a dependency graph and say, this library needs to be patched and so forth. Now, like with vulnerabilities in runtime and the agent acting through a long dependency chain, like right on with a change of context while it's acting on the fly, this is like absolutely, you don't really know what's going to happen pretty much. And there is no tool also that solves this problem. And I'm pretty sure more and more will solve partial problems on behavioral AI agentic, which I think is the right way to follow in security. And there is like tons of great stuff happening there. Many people doing great research, and this will come. It's going to be a very competitive market also, I believe. But without a tooling like this, it's impossible pretty much that you really have your risk in control. All you can do is, you try to control every time a new agent is built in a company, to advocate, to build the access control with the people that are building the agents, and you're by their side. And this is what we do at Talon so far. But the tooling landscape will evolve and will be a must to actually do proper AI agent governance in the future.
It will be a must. And especially in regulated markets, because again, there you have this next to the inherent security sort of need that you have. Of course, you need to. It's going to be a question of months that you go into an audit,
Yes.
and your auditor not only says, "Show me your human access logs or trail, show me your agentic access
Yes.
sort of logs." Julie, I quickly would love to go back to your last answer, and maybe let's break it down a little bit and go deeper into it, because I think you mentioned some really, really important problems, and maybe we can go deeper into this to understand like why agentic access is so difficult to sort of control and govern from an access management perspective, and also where it really differs from human access. I think the first thing that you mentioned, and it's kind of obvious, but I do believe it's important to highlight it. So you spoke about runtime, right? And in my perspective, the way I think about it, the fact that an agent can't today get access at runtime, right? So you need to set it up, and you need to keep that access. So in other words, today, if someone in your team is introducing Claude and connecting it to your code repository or to your CRM or to your HR system, they once approve and connect the agent, and then they're done. And it's a static, long-lived access, in other words. That's, in my perspective, one of the key risks, because now the access is there and no one will ever remove Claude. What's your take there on the specific topic of static access?
Yeah, so it's a static access in a way, because you will of course control the connectors inside of Claude. So you will be able to say, here is an API call to X application, but you don't see the long chain of events, and this is at the application layer also. So once the agent is running and you give the agent an objective to solve a specific task, the agent will just do its best to succeed, and that will also bypass some stuff. There are deeper layers that are the application layers. Kernel is the deepest one, but
deepest.
There are layers in between that the agent can actually bypass. It's not like a malicious thing. When I say bypass, it's really because it wants to fulfill its objective. So it will find all the way that it can to solve the problem. So you cannot really always predict, especially on your machine, on your laptop, more like the kernel resources, the terminal, everything. So that's very important to keep like at any point. So we do that already. And I have experimented this a bit, and I can see that as long as the human in the loop is existing, where you have to approve every time, yes, you can enter my terminal, yes, you can access this and that resources on top of the connectors, then at least this is a good guardrails. But what I also observe is more like a psychological aspect. When you're too excited about your AI agent solving the task, yes, you will just like go very fast and allowing. And there is a lot of access on the local level that has to be approved by the person itself, and not everybody is able really to like take a breath and think about it, and has also the knowledge to say, hey, yes or no. It would just do it. So yeah, it's going to broaden everything. And the long chain of access, like through even at the application layers, like app to app, we don't see that. Like also new generation of tools should like pinpoint the graph of dependencies between tools. Would be amazing. I'm sure people are building that already.
I'm sure there are some folks building something in that space. So I absolutely love your super structured thinking there, Julie. So trying to summarize where we are so far and breaking it down. So the first thing we discussed is the fact that today agents get static, long-lived access through human credentials or API keys. This was made maybe for machine identities, but not for identities that have, and that's the second topic that you brought up, that have this autonomy, right? And that's the second thought that you just mentioned. I really, really agree. So I want to stress it. So next to the fact that the human gets a long-lived access, now behind that access is an agent that only unfolds their full power if it gets that autonomy that we really want from the agent, right? And I agree what you said, an agent, we are not even speaking about an agent that turns malicious. We are just speaking about an agent will always do what it takes to complete the task, but it might go down the wrong path.
Mm-hmm.
Share data, delete the database because they think it's not needed anymore. So those two, static and autonomy, are really the first two key problems. I wanted to bring up a third point, and I'd be curious about your thinking. The third point for me is what makes this so challenging is broad permissions, right? So today, if you connect Claude to your GitHub, like the access that Claude is going to get, or any other agent, is all the tools that are available on the MCP of the respective target application. And it's like, it's a catch-all. There's no differentiation, there's no discrimination, there's no dynamic job-specific sort of permissions. It's like broad for an autonomous agent with super super broad sort of scopes. How do you think about that? The fact that it's not only static and autonomous, but also very, very broad permissions.
Yeah, I think first of all, we should do MCP monitoring at all time in runtime. Everybody should be equipped with that. And it's coming up. I think many companies will use those tools. The problem with MCP monitoring is that it's going to generate like the old kind of security system when they generated alerts on static resource, going to be a lot of them potentially. So it depends how this is going to be calibrated. Again, I think a lot of research in behavioral AI will be needed to calibrate the alerting system on MCP monitoring, and will make it workable for the security teams pretty much. Otherwise, it's going to create like a mountain of data again to triage.
Exactly. Now, you just mentioned something that really caught my attention. You said you already experimented with a few things to potentially control agents. I'm not sure if this was regarding like kernel level or where you started. Can you share some insights or some background? What initial sort of tests and experimentation you have done?
Yeah, I did something like very not that sophisticated at the moment, but something very useful. Is to connect. So we chose our AI provider, and we are connecting resources, internal resource, besides the production environment. Yet we are not ready for that. So we are still like very much isolating it. But also like to scroll in terms of data, like I'm running an agent to scroll data to see if we are exposing restricted data, security data by accident, like login credentials, API keys, or anything confidential also for the business, or PIIs in every other resources. So it gives me an alert, and then I can go to the team and challenge and say, hey, can we erase that? Do we really need to publish that? Do we need to retain this, and so forth? So we are diminishing already in terms of like data protection, the level of exposure we have in public resources.
Okay.
Public internal resources.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that's actually very smart to get going. Now, if you think about, and you just mentioned it about Talon.One, I believe like not adopting AI is not really an option these days,
No.
right? No, we agree to that. But you're in security, so your number one task is to keep things secure. So it's a trade-off. How do you deal with that trade-off at the moment?
Yeah, so you can have all the sophisticated tools in the universe. It will never replace the human factor, which is advocating, creating links with people internally, talking to people. And I think this is like the key. Everybody will want to use AI. So of course you have to govern that centrally, but in non-regulated industry, if you're not a bank, you can have like different AI tools even in banks, by the way, but I think like there's more central processy aspect to banks, and in regular industry or tech industry in particular, where you have to be very you have to innovate all the time. You cannot really hinder your teams using tools. So like everybody will use their tools, and we will also do machine learning at the product layer. I also want to mention that. So for different product features, we have also the UCP protocol coming for merchants, which is more like an MCP version for shopping, online shopping. So there will be a lot of connectivity in the future in our products, and I just have to make sure that every team is reaching out, that I'm part of their RFCs, that I'm part of their software development process, pretty much. And again, this is really like the human factor. You cannot come in your general channel saying, hey, be careful of AI, because at the end of the of the day, like, we are not sure what's going to happen with AI. So I'm also learning. I'm also in a huge learning curve of that. The risks are a bit unclear. They are very new. So you just want to be side by side with the people to make sure that the configs are right, that you're thinking about it together. So human factor always, and cooperation with everybody.
Cool. Yeah, probably these are the buckets, right? So you just mentioned bank, and we're speaking also about access control and regulated environments. So if you are a super regulated financial institution, or potentially I could think of healthcare institutions, I spoke to a few, there are certain companies that simply say no at the moment, and they control it.
I heard that too, yes.
So zero trust type of VPN based sort of complete restrictions. That's probably an option, but you are definitely missing out. Yeah.
Yes, you are missing out. It's an option, but I think the market pressure will be very, very high also for those companies to adopt quite soon. I don't think it can last.
Yeah. The other thing that I've heard, what's your take there? Also, specifically in more established, larger organizations, regulated institutions, and some of them would go and say, well, I can't say no. Yeah, we cannot say no. We also can't just open the doors, open the gates, and everyone can just introduce what they want. We only allow people to build or to use certain sort of in-house built agents. What's your perspective on that strategy?
So I'm not sure, like, in-house built, I guess, with but with like an external tool like Claude, or
Yeah, I've heard different stories. I've heard stories that said of companies that said, like, we built something, but obviously we're using some of the major players behind it, but we kind of tried to tame it. And then there are others that simply said, like, we built our own agents.
I mean, if you can build your own agents, that means you have a team of engineers, like AI engineers are already like quite mature. So it's not every company can afford that, first of all. Yeah, I think it's great to choose a tool that is already very performant. I have my preference. I'm not going to advocate for any tool, but I have my personal preference, and it's good to test out the big players, and it's good to choose one of the big players and stick to it, and really do the best out of it. When it comes to connectors, we do it iteratively. We don't launch the AI tool and say, okay, now let's go have fun, build whatever you want. We are connecting some tools iteratively, and we test the needs of the users internally first, and then the connectors are building up. And every time there is agentic creation, so far I'm involved with, we have built some guidelines. We are checking the configs still centrally at this point. Yeah. So it's not it's still enabling people. It's not a blocker, because we are not at the point where we are building 10 agents per day in the company, But if it had to scale, I guess we would scale. We'll also scale that, We'll scale a team that would take care of AI security in the company. I mean, not a big team, but we will also scale with the need.
Cool. Yeah. And my thought there is, I do understand the second bucket of companies that only allow in-house agents. I get it, but again, the change that we are going through is so fundamental. And how likely is it that some corporate companies develop their own agents that are as powerful as the 2 or 3 leading players in the space? So ultimately, sooner or later, I don't see a world where companies do not adopt, and you should rather learn how to deal with it sooner than later.
That's right. A bit both ways. I'm also hoping, that we have some bigger players in Europe that also develop and catch the train. Like, there is Mistral AI, which is already pretty good. There is Aleph Alpha also in Germany. There are not so many, unfortunately. Maybe it's not about the quantity, but I'm hoping at least that they will be enabled, and they will have some public financing to go forth and develop themselves and be great competitors to Anthropic or OpenAI or Google. Yeah.
Cool. So I like the path that you guys at Talon are taking at the moment. You enable people. There's, again, as you said, the human factor. By the way, something that that many people forget at the moment. That's my deep conviction. So yes, of course, it's now about what agent can be connected to what MCP server and to what other tools, but it's always a human still behind that agent,
Yeah.
right? And an agent that is being introduced by your CTO, the same agent, of course, will have very different or should have very different permissions than if someone from your sales team uses that agent, right? So
Yes.
the human, we must not forget the human in the loop, even though it's all about agents at the moment. If you enable your teams now, and you really highlighted this a few times, that educating, enabling people is one of the number one things that you're doing at the moment. Do you feel that the majority of people sort of understand why this really matters from a security perspective, or is it more like, come on, I just quickly connect that, where's the problem?
So I think the AI literacy is very, very diverse from a team to another. This is what I've observed. The easiest is really the engineering fleets, of course, because they're already familiar with it. They develop with machine learning already for a while. So they know. They know on the product side also, they're very familiar with it in general. But more on some departments that are not necessarily tech oriented, because that's not the root of their mission, of course. There is still like some ramp up. I think in general in security, if you even if you exclude AI, the education in security and basic security and even basic access management is still something that you have to constantly advocate to teams who are not necessarily familiar with technology. And now with AI on top, it gets a little bit more like you have to be very didactic, like to explain those kind of risk also that are like, again, as I said before, it's a very new category of risk. So you cannot explain anymore the risk in terms of, a malware will infect your system. It's not going to be like that. And even like indirect prompt injection is very difficult to explain. So we do some trainings. That's what we do pretty much, like hands-on stuff with like very concrete use cases regularly to make sure. We're also there to answer questions at all time. That's all we can do. Again, like the human aspect is super important.
I love that, and I love what you just said. It's the first time that I heard it, but I can agree to it. There's quite a substantial sort of difference in understanding and diversity in sort of AI capabilities. That is definitely true, Julie. Maybe as we are coming to an end, we are speaking about today. And I could go on for an hour now because it's really fascinating. As we are speaking about specifically access control in regulated environments, two things I quickly wanted to touch upon as a closing round, Julie. So when you're going into your next audit, and I know Talon today is not a regulated environment, but you do have large-scale enterprise customers, and they're demanding, how long will it take until auditors will specifically and in a very granular manner, in your perspective, ask not only about human but about agentic access? Do you expect that in your next audit in a very
actually manner? I do. We have the SOC 2 audit coming up, the yearly one. So we are audited for our certifications and our attestations, and we already know that this is going to be in scope, that AI will be in scope. So yeah. I don't know how granular they will be. Let's see. I'm also very curious. But we need to have governance in place already of AI. So that's pretty clear. And we need to have like a form of control that we are able to bring evidence to, like how many AI agents are existing. We should be able to say it and to show it and to show the logs and know where to retrieve them. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that this will come up already this year.
That's fascinating. And the logs, by the way, when we spoke earlier about static access on autonomous agents, broad permissions, actually lacking logs is another one that makes agents such a challenge from an access governance perspective. Julie, last but not least, I'd be really curious. So Europe is famous, some say infamous, for its sort of policy frameworks in terms of AI regulation. What's your fundamental or general take there? Do you think the route that the EU is taking with its pretty sort of, call it comprehensive regulation of AI, do you think it's a good path, or is it more like, does it feel like a lost cause?
So I think, first of all, my deep belief is that we should definitely regulate and enforce security. The question is not like if it's too much or too less compliance, it's the how. And the how is very huge, I think, in European regulation, at least what I've experienced on the security side, or DORA, for example, which is like a huge piece of regulation. That is an important one. But I think people who are building regulation have a lack of hands-on and operational mindset. I think this is this friction with innovation and speed, and that we have to ensure to be a very competitive in the market. I believe it's possible to achieve to have efficient regulation that do not block innovation. But I think it's a complex topic, and I think we have to get really better at that, and and find ways to regulate better in a more hands-on manner and closer to the reality. And I saw that when I was in the second line of defense control function, I was too far from the teams actually building stuff. And your controls are not even super valuable at the end, because they are not really reflective of the reality or the security of the reality. They are very much like checkboxes that come from frameworks from a long time ago. I think we have to revamp and modernize all those frameworks, and maybe even not be afraid to put some stuff in a garbage and start from scratch again, and look at the operational realities of companies, and build efficient framework. I think a lot of tooling also, again, I don't believe tooling is the answer to everything. I repeat it. But if technology is smart, we will also adapt to that in a very good way. And we will also get better at security and resilience, and ensure like compliance by design. And when I say by design, it's really, you don't need a team anymore to extract evidence. This time must be over.
Yeah, that's a very, very important point. To me, it sometimes feel that, and it's interesting what you're saying. You just said, like, even as a security leader in a company, in a central team, you sometimes feel that it's difficult to still be fully attached to the operational day-to-day challenges. Now think of a, sorry for the French, EU bureaucrat, who has probably no clue whatsoever about AI, but is good in writing legal documents. Of course, they come up with something that is like, it just, then reality hits in.
Yeah, very off. I think it's time that they invite practitioners on the field to build the regulation with them, people that obviously care about security and resilience, and really get into practical manners to provide, not even to provide evidence, but to ensure security by design in systems.
Yes.
And the checkbox approach is very standalone. Also, I just wanted to add one last thing, because this is one of my favorite topics. The compliance, the way it's built now, cannot catch dependency and dynamic aspects of the stack. And I think this is the biggest problem. So at the end, you will create a lot of paperwork, and you can be very good at the paperwork, but that doesn't mean you're necessarily very good at resilience.
No, exactly. Now I have to pick this up, because I totally agree. This also ties into what you said earlier about decision fatigue, right? If you are in the loop as a human and you need to constantly approve something in Claude Code, after half an hour, you will just go, yeah, just do it. So I agree. But to me, in my perspective, my personal view is the way that, like, in the EU at the moment, we have more AI regulation than AI. And that's a problem. And what you just said must be the way. Otherwise, we will see cases like the sad case that we've seen the other week of compliance companies with 35 million in funding selling fake SOC reports. That's all an outcome of compliance and security not being tied into each other anymore. And it's just, do you have an access control policy? Yes, I do. And not about like, hey, how do you understand the dependencies in the access your agents have?
Yeah, I very much agree to that. And I also think it's a real security concern, by the way, to incentivize companies to have tons of paperwork versus focusing on what actually matters. And because that also pulls away resources in one company, and not necessarily in a very productive manner. That's my opinion. But I think ultimately it's going to happen a bit naturally, because the tools, again, there are many people thinking about those problems and are very innovative. And ultimately, there will be some tool that tells you, okay, this is about security, not about compliance. But now with AI, the compliance part is really like cake. It's like, yes, exactly. And you can pull out your compliance in one click with AI. And if you prompt well, if you say, okay, can you use the DORA framework to actually match each and every, am I really matching that? What is my gap analysis? It's going to do it. And it's going to do it also pretty well, I have to say. It was not that great 2 years ago once it started, but now it leaped up. Like it's amazing. It really works well. So yeah, this is a new time for compliance also.
That's a beautiful closing remark. Time is flying by. Julie, merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. This was a pleasure. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening, everyone, and speak soon. Bye.
Thank you, Johannes. Bye-bye.